Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video I have a good video for you. Today we are talking about the new TYR Maverick V1, and I know you've heard about the Maverick V1 because TYR just put out a lot of effort with the marketing of this shoe, and for good reason, because they put a lot of work into making this shoe. And of course they're claiming that it is better than all the competition, but you're gonna have to make that decision for yourself. Let's get into it. I want to talk about how TYR was really pushing this shoe and market it when it was released. You probably saw the unboxings, you probably saw my unboxing. And TYR sent this really fancy shoebox, and they sent this. It's a confidential dossier. It's got all the information about this shoe. But now the shoe has been released, and if you go on TYR.com and you look at the Maverick V1, you will see most of the information that they present in this dossier. But we'll get more into the stats and the specs in just a second. Oh, we're going to jump right into the specs, but we'll talk more about, I don't know, the scientific evidence or results from TYR studies in just a second. So first of all, I know you're wondering how much this thing costs, and that is the best part. TYR has made it somewhat affordable. The TYR Maverick V1 will cost $150. And I know $150 is still a lot of money, but it is comparable with the competition. But there are a few things that separate the Maverick from the competition. And I guess we'll jump right into one of the differences right now, because the TYR Maverick V1 has 44 in the heel, 36 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. That's a lot of stack height. I guess I should tell you before we move any further what the TYR Maverick V1 is actually used for. And this is a very light daily trainer. And its weight is probably the main selling point. So if weight is something that you really think about when you buy a new pair of shoes, then right off the bat, I think the TYR Maverick is definitely one you're going to want to consider. Because according to TYR, in a US men's size 9, the Maverick will tip the scale at 7.7 ounces or 220 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it's still pretty light. And in my size, it tips the scale at 9.56 ounces or 271 grams. And I will tell you about the weights of some of the competitors towards the end of this video, but let's get into the shoe first. And by getting into the shoe, I think we are going to start at the top as we always do and work our way down. And look at that, that heel collar padding is quite thin. This is obviously where TYR is saving a little bit of weight. But here's the thing, I think this is an appropriate amount of padding. I found this to be just as comfortable as any of the highly padded daily trainers that I use. So yeah, I like what TYR has done here. Now, as far as the heel counter goes, it's semi-rigid. Well, you know, it's probably rigid, it's just not super rigid. So yeah, there is a little bit of give if you really press hard, and we have this kind of external support coming around the heel. But either way, if you are not a fan of a loose heel counter, I don't think you're going to have any problems with this in the Maverick. One thing I was concerned about when I first got the shoe before I went for a run in it is that when I kind of feel inside the heel, the padding is very biased towards the top of the heel collar, and when I put my finger in and I'm pressing around, it feels like there is no cushioning right here, like at the base of my heel. I was worried that that could create a little rubbing if the shoe didn't lock me in enough. However, I'm happy to say that my heel fit in nicely, and I didn't have any rubbing at the base of my heel, and I did find that cushioning to be enough. The upper is a super lightweight, very breathable mesh. We've got quite a few overlays, which I guess is a little surprising just because it's so light, but obviously the overlays are very thin. We just got some kind of wing logos here on the lateral and the medial side. Again, we've got that external overlay coming around the heel, just lending a bit of support. There is an underlay around the toe box, the reinforcement along the eyelet chain, and just a little bit here on the side at the toe box. The tongue is something I really like, and this is a top-notch tongue for a daily trainer. It is super thin. There is just enough padding along the top to stop those laces from biting in. The tongue wraps around the top of my foot nicely. It is gusseted. We've got a double lace loop here on the front. No issues with the tongue at all. I do just want to hold that shoe up for you so you can see how wide it is. The toe box is quite wide. Now you should also notice that it is quite narrow in the midfoot, but certainly not too narrow for my narrow foot. In fact, if I hold this up right now and I let the camera adjust to the shoe, yeah, right here, you can see just a little bit of bunching, which indicates that the upper is just a little too roomy for my foot. You know, when I cinch down those laces, in order to get a good fit, I am getting just a little bit of bunching right here. And that's totally fine, right? I didn't notice that on the run. I didn't get any hot spots. There's nothing negative other than me just noticing how it looks here in the studio. So what that means is that I think maybe if you have just slightly wider feet, this shoe is going to work well for you. And I think what it also tells me is that perhaps I could have gone down to a size 12.5. Now, if you've been following me along for a little while, you know that I do wear anything from a size 12 up to a size 13, with the majority being size 13. And the previous TYR shoes that I have tested have also been in a size 13. However, for me, I think next time TYR releases a shoe, I am probably going to choose a US men's size 12.5, hoping that I can just eliminate this bunching by reducing the volume of the upper. We'll see. I had no problem in the length. I think I could probably shrink half a size without too many issues. Now, of course, the upper it's a pretty good upper. I mean, especially if we're comparing it to other daily trainers, the upper on the TYR Maverick is very breathable. I found it comfortable enough. You know, it kind of feels just a little rough? Nah, I don't know. But I've said that about other shoes and it's totally irrelevant because I'm always going to wear socks in my running shoes. And when you're wearing socks, it doesn't really matter what the upper feels like. So I've got no complaints on the upper. This is probably one of my favorite uppers of daily training running shoes just because I do tend to like a more lightweight and breathable upper. But the main selling point of the Maverick is the midsole because TYR has introduced a brand new midsole compound. They're calling it Flight Time. Now, I'm not 100% sure what the composition of Flight Time is. I do know that it's a supercritical foam, and I have seen somewhere that it's a blend of EVA, OBC, and PIBA, right? I guess the composition is somewhat irrelevant, right? It's a supercritical foam, and we'll talk more about how that foam performs in the ride section. Now, what differentiates the TYR Maverick from the competition is how much midsole foam we have and how light the shoe is. In fact, one of the stats that TYR touts about the Maverick is that it has a higher cushioning to weight ratio than the average running shoe. And that number alone sounds pretty impressive, right? Now, another thing that TYR is promoting about the shoe is the RSI. RSI is the Reactive Strength Index, and basically it's a ratio of ground contact time to flight time. It indicates elastic efficiency and explosive strength. When we have a higher RSI, it indicates the ability to have a quicker turnover and therefore a higher cadence. As we all know, when we have a higher cadence, that is the best way to pick up speed, making the TYR Maverick potentially a faster running shoe. Now, another thing that TYR has been promoting, at least in this confidential dossier, is the flight time foam in the Maverick actually increases flight time, which, you know what, I always thought we wanted to reduce flight time, right? We don't want to be hanging in the air for longer than we absolutely have to, because in order to have a longer hang time, it means we have to be higher. And the higher we go, so our vertical oscillation, means we're going to be increasing our impact forces. Maybe they're meaning that the RSI of the Maverick allows you to take longer steps while still maintaining a high cadence, and therefore you are in the air for longer and you're just covering longer distances. I think TYR put out a fantastic marketing package, at least for the reviewers, and it's all very interesting, but what it really comes down to is how the shoe feels on the foot. But we're still not there quite yet. Let's just take a look at the outsole. And yeah, we got a good amount of outsole rubber. I am seeing quite a bit of wear here on this back lateral heel, which if you've seen any of my videos, you know that is totally normal. That is generally where I'm going to be hitting. I'm a heel striker, especially at low speeds, so this is not surprising. Got a little island here in the middle, and then kind of a horseshoe around the top. This rubber here in the middle is looking pretty good, but the outsole rubber is just not super thick. As of the making of this video, I am not seeing anywhere on this flight time foam. The rubber does come out long enough to just protect that for me, so that's a good thing. And I guess depending on your running style, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone got 400 miles out of this shoe, but if it was a little less, I also wouldn't be too surprised. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, Matt, that's, 44 in the heel. That's a lot of stack. How does it feel for the stability? Well, look, if I hold that up again, if we look at it from the bottom, you can see that this is a very wide shoe. And if we look at it from the top, yeah, we can see this sole flare just coming out on both sides. It comes out a lot on the forefoot. So we do have a very wide base on the Maverick. And that is the reason that it does create quite a stable ride. I mean, I say quite a stable ride. Obviously, it's not a stability shoe, but what I mean is that when I'm going around corners, not once did I feel like I was going to roll off the top of the shoe. And also, sometimes when brands put just a lot of junk in the trunk, when my form starts to break down and I'm running and one foot is coming past the other, sometimes I do notice that the midsole foam is kind of brushing my leg as it goes past. I haven't found that with the Maverick. So maybe TYR has just added just the right amount of foam here in the booty. Or maybe I just haven't run long enough where I got tired enough for my form to break down that much. Okay, so now let's talk about the ride. First, when I press this, yeah, the foam feels quite soft when I press it. However, I'm happy to tell you that the foam is not as soft as it feels when I just press it. Flight Time foam is actually a very good daily training foam. It's not too plush, it's not too firm. Now, I will say that it's on the softer end of the spectrum than the firmer end of the spectrum, and I would have no trouble, well, I've had no trouble going out for my easy runs, my recovery runs. And as far as daily trainers go, when you need to pick up the speed in the TYR Maverick, because of its weight, because of the responsive flight time foam, it does perform pretty well. Now, TYR does make several other running shoes. In fact, you remember last year with the Valkyrie Speedworks. This was actually one of my shoes of the year last year. And this is like their training shoe. It is super light. It has a beaded PIBA foam. We have a plate in the bottom. It just performs very well. And this would be the shoe that I would grab if I was going out for a workout. If I was going to do a tempo run, if I was going to do intervals, I'd probably be grabbing the Speedworks. If you didn't have the Speedworks and you just wanted to make do, the Maverick does a very good job, especially when we compare it to other daily trainers. Now, in that top secret dossier, TYR actually does compare the Maverick to some other top selling shoes. In fact, I think the biggest competitor for the Maverick is going to be the Adidas Evo SL. I think it's a pretty brave thing to compare the new Maverick with the Evo SL because the Evo SL has been a hype shoe for quite a long time. Remember, Adidas started hyping this shoe, I don't know, what was it, 6 months before the actual release? And all that hype is really backed up in the shoe. However, TYR has a pretty solid competitor when it comes to the Evo SL. I gotta say, I am a fan of a white colorway. I do like the black stripes on my Evo SL. Anyway, the Evo SL is the same price, so it'll cost $150. But there's a lot less stack in the Evo SL. In fact, we have 38.5 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for a 6.5mm drop. And in my size, the Evo SL would have to scale at 283 grams, making the TYR Maverick V1 12 grams lighter in my size. And I think just because of how this shoe is shaped, it's going to fit the feet of more runners than the Evo SL. Now, I think if I was going to go out and I was going to choose a shoe to run fast in, I would probably still go with the Evo SL, but the TYR Maverick would be a close second. And if I was looking at a shoe to do everything, I would definitely be grabbing the TYR Maverick over the Evo SL. Okay, next up, TYR also compares the Maverick to the New Balance Rebel V5. The Rebel V5 is $10 less, it costs $140, and has quite a bit less stack. We have 35 in the heel, 29 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. And in my size, it'll tip to scale at 263 grams. So actually, the Rebel V5 is 8 grams less than my size of the Maverick. But in New Balance, I do wear a men's size 12.5. So perhaps if I'd have dropped down to a US men's size 12.5 in the TYR Maverick, I think the Maverick would have weighed just slightly less than the Rebel V5. And then also, although not compared by TYR, we have the Mizuno Neo Zen. Now, the Neo Zen is the same price, $150. We have 34 for a 6mm drop. And in my size, the Neo Zen weighs in at 293 grams. So the Maverick weighs 22 grams less than my size in the Neo Zen. Now, the Neo Zen has that knit upper. It has a softer ride than the Maverick, but I think we would use these shoes the same. And I think they would perform the same. By that, I mean, even though they are going to feel different underfoot, they are going to excel at those easy runs and you're going to be able to use them to pick up the pace. So I guess what that means is there is a lot of competition in the market for this price point and this type of shoe. What TYR has done is separated themselves from the competition by making a lightweight trainer with a lot more stack than the competition. And one thing I can say about the TYR Maverick is that it is a fun shoe to run in. This is a shoe that I have taken on several trips as kind of like the shoe that I wear all the time that I just need to do everything while I'm away. It's a very useful shoe. And at $150, I think the price is spot on. But guys, now I want to hear from you. What are your initial thoughts on the TYR Maverick V1? Are you thinking of picking up a pair? Have you run in any TYR shoes, be it the Valkyrie Speedworks or the Valkyrie Elite? Drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the brand new TYR Maverick V1. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.